ladies. I'm just going to wait and see if anybody hops on. If not, I'm going to go ahead and get started. I am going to discuss heathenry tonight, this evening, whatever time of day it is for you. So I'll wait a few seconds to see if anybody hops on. You'll have to excuse my redness, my appearance. It is freaking hot. I have had some wine, some chocolate wine that is freaking phenomenal. And my husband is sticking the shower curtain out, hi Ronnie, out the bathroom window. But yeah, my mother-in-law's neighbor bought her some chocolate wine, and she cracked it open today and let me try it. Hi Jody, I knew you weren't gonna miss this. So I am finally home after playing in the rain and drinking some wine, drinking some more wine, and I'm gonna talk about heathenry. Hopefully I don't slur too much. And I will be going pretty well off of my notes just so I don't lose track. So, most people already know what heathenry is. It's otherwise known as Norse. Beliefs, practices, and viewpoints vary from person to person. It is actually doing much better. This is it now compared to what it was days ago. It's pretty much gone on my other arm, and I've got a little bit on the inside of my right leg. But this was the worst of it over here, and it has improved a lot. I've been taking the steroids every day that my doctor prescribed to me and putting the steroid cream on it, so it's helped massively. I'm so thankful for my doctor. He's freaking amazing. So yeah, it's doing a lot better. I'm very glad for that. I feel so shiny, and I literally just washed my face. It's so hot. It's muggy here today. So beliefs, practices, and viewpoints vary from person to person, group to group, and region to region. Heathenry is, by its very nature, a richly diverse belief system. Most of our ancestors were heathen. Many people with Northern European ancestry don't realize that the original religion of their ancestors was not Christianity. If you go back 1,000 years or more prior to the conversions to Christianity in Europe, our ancestors had their own native folk religion that was rich and meaningful in their lives. Our people honored their own gods and goddesses, their ancestors, and the spirits of nature. These original heathens were the pre-Christian Northern European peoples who lived in the lands around what is now called the North Sea. These people included the Anglo-Saxon. Sorry, I froze up for a second. My Wi-Fi disconnected out here. I just put it on data, so it shouldn't lose connection again. As I was saying, the original heathens were the pre-Christian Northern European peoples who lived in the lands around what is now called the North Sea. These included the people of Anglo-Saxon England, Scandinavia, and Germany. I myself am part, hi Emily. I myself am part German, actually a large portion of German. My grandfather's father was German, and his mother was pure blood Cherokee Indian. So I've got a lot of both of those flowing through these veins. Still considered a mutt, but those are two of the more predominant genes that I have flowing through me. Some of the heathens were convinced to convert to Christianity by missionaries. Some were coerced to convert. Told you, I'm sorry if I slur, it's the wine. Were coerced to convert based on threats of physical violence. Others were converted due to political or economic pressures brought on them by Christians, and some of our ancestors were killed because they refused to give up their ways. That is a whole other story for another time. It takes you back to the Salem witch trials, which I will be picking back up on teaching about the Salem witch trials. I believe in August I will be doing another Salem witch trials live teaching on those. It's very important to know the history of witchcraft, and Salem witch trials are right up there with some things you should probably know in this path. Hi, Kitty. So with modern oh my gosh. Hi, Brittany. Modern heathen groups around the world are reviving these old practices and call their religion by various names, including Asatru, the Northern tradition, Odinism, Foreign Sed, Germanic pagan reconstructionism, or simply heathenry. I call it heathenry. Most people call it heathenry. Just depends on where you are from, what region you live in. In Iceland, which did not convert to Christianity until the 11th century, heathenry has once again became an official and nationally recognized religion in Iceland. Almost makes me want to move to Iceland, but it's entirely too cold up there. Heathens work to build healthy relationships with gods and goddesses, ancestors, spirits of the land, and others in their communities, both through holy rites and through their day-to-day actions and deeds. There is no central authority in modern heathenry to establish or enforce dogma or standardized beliefs. Most modern heathens see this as a good thing. Over time, each heathen family or local group tends to develop its own individual practices and beliefs, just as we do in witchcraft. What we might read out of one book, we take and adapt it to our own practices and beliefs and turn it into what we feel pulled to and what we are called to use in our own practices. Those of us that see this as a good thing tend to refer to this as the tribal nature of the Asatru. This tribal approach requires heathens to look to their similarities with heathens from other areas and other groups rather than engaging in endless debates, fighting, and condemnation over the smallest of differences. There are various efforts to move modern heathenry forward, including the establishment and growth of local groups, regional gatherings and alliances, national organizations, and plenty of online information sharing and networking. You didn't let her sit with that soap on her long enough. Sorry, my husband had to give the dog a bath. Among heathens, you will often hear discussions about heathenry not being just a religion. This comes from the fact that while heathenry does involve certain religious beliefs and activities, it also involves many cultural elements and values, a significant change in worldview from the mainstream, and for those that fully involve themselves. Heathenry, just as witchcraft, is a way of life, and it enriches and informs almost every area of one's life. I like to almost use the terms heathenry and witchcraft, or being a witch, interchangeably, because while heathenry describes a particular type of witchcraft, it's still witchcraft in general. Heathenry goes right along with Hecate, however you want to pronounce it, however she wants you to pronounce it. Go. So it has, heathenry is just another form of witchcraft. It's just another name and a different way of practicing. Heathenry is not a hobby. It is not role-playing. It is not fantasy. It is not something one only does online. It is not once a week or only on the holidays activity. As one delves fully into heathenry, it becomes evident that our mainstream culture, within which most of us were raised, has been heavily influenced and shaped by centuries of Christianity and the foreign cultural values that came along with that conversion. A return to the way of our ancestors involves more than just honoring our gods and our ancestors and the spirits of the land. To truly return, one must learn the cultural values of our ancestors and begin to see the world, our lives, and our families as our ancestors saw them. Which I can't preach that enough. One cannot overstate how difficult it can be to shed the cultural values of the society within which you were raised and to internalize the cultural values of a pre-Christian culture. It is an ongoing process that takes years of reading, consideration, and deeds, and an ongoing process that never truly ends. Learning about heathenry and internalizing the values and beliefs inspired by the ways of our ancestors is a lot of work. There are contemporary texts to read and consider. There are scholarly works and secondary sources that you can access. It's not to say that one isn't really heathen until one has read 100 books or some other outrageous number. But the learning process never really ends. Never ends. It doesn't really matter what it is within spirituality or outside of spirituality. Learning never ends. There is no central authority to tell you what to think or to believe. There is no one holy book that can be read to tell you all there is to know. In almost every case, there is no heathen church down on the corner. In developing one's heathen beliefs and practices, one must consider a wide array of sources. And in a sense, yes, it is a never-ending story. Though others have gone before you, you must still find your own way. Again, it's the same with finding your path within the craft. To gather with other heathens, you may need to be one of them to find them and gather them. To experience a religious observance, you may need to learn how to organize and conduct one. In other words, kind of like a coven. If a moral or practical question is confounding you, you may need to search out the answer or figure out the answer for yourself based on what you learn. But as with all things in the world, you have to work for the things that are worth having. Heathenry also has a lot of jargon and terminology that most new heathens really haven't heard before. The concepts of frith, Gefrain, and Orlog are just a few. There are words that new heathens have heard before that have a different or deeper meaning within heathenry. The concept of luck, as understood by most heathens, is an example of this. But as in all new areas of learning, don't let the terminology discourage you. When you hear a word or concept you don't quite understand, do a little research to figure out what they mean. Or if all else fails, just ask. Somebody is bound to know what it might mean if you don't quite understand it. Over time, these words and concepts will become clear to you and help to enrich your understanding of heathenry. My coven is actually reading out of the Big Blue Buckland's book by Raymond Buckland, The Complete Book of Witchcraft. That was our first chosen book that we were doing. And I've had some of the ladies say, one of the girls that's no longer with us, she said that it was too formal. A lot of the words were very Anglo-Saxon-ish that she couldn't quite understand. Now, mind you, I love her to pieces. Don't get me wrong. She's in her early 20s. So a lot of it, she also had an IEP growing up. So I can understand why that book might be a little more challenging for her to understand. I was able to understand it pretty easily. But it'll come differently to different people. No worries, Serenity. It just all depends. Anytime you study something or you don't understand something, find another book that you might understand. I had actually told this friend of mine who was reading the Big Blue book to also use or compare it to Juliet Diaz, her book called The Witchery, The Witch Within, because the Witch Within was a much simpler form of what was being taught in Buckland's Big Blue book. It's just more modern terms in the Witchery book, whereas in Buckland's Big Blue book, it is very formal and old style type of reading. And if that's not something that piques your interest with that type of wording, it's going to be a little hard to keep you involved in reading it, page after page after page and want to continue reading it. Whereas if you've got something that has more of your modern language in it, easier to understand, it'll be a little bit more of a page turner type book. And it's the same thing with Heathenry. While some of the books out there may have some words that you don't quite understand, you can try to find other books that are more relatable to this generation. An author who puts it a little more simply instead of using all of the big words like they do in Buckland's. So pay attention to those when you are finding your books that you're reading for anything that you're reading on. If you buy something that doesn't seem to resonate with you because of the wording, just try to find something that is a little less old school and more modern to the newer, younger generation, to put it simply. So let's move on. So nothing was more important to our ancestors than kin. The smallest social unit in our mainstream culture is the individual, but among our ancestors, the smallest social unit was the family. An individual on his own had no one to speak up for him, no one to look out for him, and no one to avenge him should he be done wrong. An individual was nothing. In modern heathenry, there is a strong focus on healthy families. Nearly every local group encourages the whole family to be involved. Loyalty to one's family is seen as being of primary importance. The most commonly used term for local heathen groups is kindred, and most kindreds are organized in a structure similar to an extended family. There are solitary heathens. Some are solitary by choice, while others live in areas where they have not yet found other heathens with which to associate with or to gather. For many heathens, the community aspects of heathenry are central to the practice of their faith. Associating with other heathens can accelerate your learning, motivate you to greater accomplishments, and allow one to fully live and experience the cultural values that are embodied in the ways of our ancestors. For instance, how better to practice and share frith in your life than to be surrounded by other people who understand the concept as well. Same thing with when you're learning about witchcraft. It's more enriching and more fulfilling when you have friends or even family who share or want to learn the same things that you do. I guess it makes it more exciting. Having my coven, my and Crystal's coven, it makes my drive even higher to push myself to get out of my comfort zone with the things that I've already learned and the things that we're going to be teaching them. Our goal is to push everyone, even ourselves, to our limits and beyond, and see where this is going to take us, because as I stated earlier, it's a never-ending journey when it comes to learning. So while we're both crones, there's still room for us to learn more and more and more. And even though we've only had our one meeting, coming up on our second meeting, we had our first Sabbath ritual yesterday. We held a midsummer ritual, and it was absolutely phenomenal. The connections are definitely there, and I look forward to seeing where it goes. This community-oriented nature of heathenry also fills a gap in an otherwise individualistic and fairly selfish mainstream culture. In a world where neighbors don't know each other, families fall apart on a regular basis, and it often feels like everyone is out for themselves. Heathenry is a place where you can get to know good people and share friendship, loyalty, and mutual support with them. Amazing things can be accomplished when people of worth work collectively to accomplish important goals. Heathenry is a term used to describe the religious practices of two main groups of people, one historical and one modern. The original heathens were the pre-Christian Northern European peoples who lived 1,000 or more years ago. In the inlands, modern heathen groups around the world are reviving these old practices. We stated what those were. Heathens working will continue build healthy relationships with gods and goddesses, ancestors, and spirits of the land. Heathenry, like all ancient European pagan religions, is polytheistic and recognizes a large number of gods and other spiritual entities. Although the heathen gods are best known from Norse mythology, often called anglicized versions of their Old Norse names. Sorry, these little tiny flies are driving me up a wall. They've been around my house for the last few days and they're just driving me nuts. The god known to early Germanic tribes as, don't condemn me if I pronounce this wrong, Wodhanaz, Wodhanaz, became Odin, but Odhinn in the Old Norse. Woden is Anglo-Saxon and Old Saxon, and Wotan is an Old High German. Some of the most well-known heathen gods are enshrined in our English days of the week. Tuesday is named after Tyr, T-I-W, but it's pronounced T-Y-R. Wednesday after Woden, or Odin. Thursday after Thunor, or Thor. And Friday after the goddess Frigg. We all know that. In addition to the better-known major gods, the names of several dozen local or tribal gods are known through medieval literature, runic inscriptions, and votive stones. Most heathens choose to actively honor a subset of gods with whom they have developed personal relationships, although offerings are also often made to all the gods and goddesses. Heathens relate to their gods as complex personalities who each have many different attributes and talents. For example, Thor is popularly known outside heathen circles as the mighty hammer-wielding god of thunder. In Eddic poetry, he is called by names such as Deep Thinker, Man's Well-Wisher, and Consecrator Thor, revealing the gentler side to Thor's nature. And we all know how Thor is. In addition to gods, heathens recognize and relate to a wide variety of spiritual beings or wights. These include the Norns, who are 3 female entities who weave the web of word, and the Disir, who are female ancestral spirits attached to a tribe, family, or individual. Heathens also work with hidden folk such as elves, brownies, dwarfs, and ettins, otherwise giants and not so pleasant folk. They interact with the house wights who live in their homes, and the landwits who occupy features of the landscape such as streams, mountains, forests, or fields. Having a relationship with landwits is an important feature of the heathen religion, and outdoor heathen rituals will not proceed until the permission of landwits is sought and obtained. For me, that would be the Fae. We actually invoked the Fae at our midsummer ritual yesterday to thank them for the beautiful flowers and the ever-growing grass and the trees. It was an absolutely beautiful ritual. Another characteristic of heathen religion is the respect given to ancestors in general, as should be with any and every religion out there. These may be a person's literal forebears, or may be people now dead who have inspired them in some way. There are no central authorities in heathenry, no single organization to which all heathens belong. There are national and international organizations created to facilitate networking between heathens. There is no widely recognized priesthood, although sometimes individuals may be recognized as priests and priestesses within their own communities, such as a coven. It's just a heathen coven instead of like our coven we are eclectic elemental coven. These guys would be known as a heathen coven. Many heathens belong to small groups made up of heathen friends and family members. These groups are sometimes called hearths or kindreds and meet for religious rituals in members' homes or in outdoor spaces. Some hearths and kindreds have recognized leaders, aka a coven. It's just a heathen coven. Rites and celebrations. The main rites celebrated in heathenry are called blot, but it is pronounced bloat, and symbol, which is pronounced sumble. Heathen groups and individuals hold feasts and celebrations based around bloat and symbol at rites of passage such as weddings or baby namings, seasonal holidays, oath takings, rites in honor of a particular god or goddess, and rites of need in which the gods are asked for a particular type of help. A bloat was originally the ritual sacrifice of an animal to one or more gods, elves, or ancestors. A feast followed afterwards at which the meat was shared amongst the participants. Bloats were held to honor the gods or to gain their favor for specific purposes such as peace, victory, or good sailing weather. A modern bloat centers around the offering of food or drink, often mead, to the gods, and tends to be followed by a feast. That is a typical ritual, Sabbath ritual for witches as well, especially with the coven setting or around Yule or Samhain, when you may do a dumb supper for your ancestors. It's the same type of thing. It may be a simple rite or a more elaborate one, depending on the purpose of the bloat and the number of participants. In an indoor bloat where food is offered, it is common to lay a place for the god, ancestor, or elf at the table, otherwise known as a dumb supper. In an outdoor bloat, offerings are often thrown into a fire. For our midsummer ritual that we didn't have a fire. It was too ungodly hot to light a fire. Instead, my husband had unknowingly constructed a rock altar in my yard. He calls it his rock bench, but I call it an altar. And we actually created an altar on the top of this rock feature that my husband built for me. And we built an altar on there. And I had created an incense blend. And then later in the evening, when it got dark and we actually did light a fire, I took that incense blend and threw it into the fire with another offering to the Fae as a thank you for joining us for our my midsummer ritual that we did, and for blessing me with the beautiful flowers and the gardens that I have this year. Sumbel is a ritual drinking ceremony in which one or more drinking horns or other vessels are filled with mead or another appropriate drink and used for toasting or boasting. It is common for modern heathens to pass the horns around all those participating after the liquid is blessed. These days, you really don't want to do that, especially with COVID and some people being germaphobes. You just put your own in a little glass and you each cheers and drink out of your own glass. Chocolate wine, preferably. The first round of toasts may be to the gods, the second round to wits or ancestors, and the third round may be to whatever else the assembled heathens wish to toast. There may be many more rounds, or the sumbel may stop after a designated number. A separate libation, drink offering, may be given to the gods, land wits, or house wits, or some of the contents of the horn may be poured out as an offering to them. I'm sure most of you notice or possibly have done this. If somebody has passed away and you are having a drink in honor of them, a lot of people will dump some on the ground in honor to them. As well as major offerings to the gods or elves, heathens like to leave gifts for their domestic hidden folk, the Fae. The wits who live in their garden and house. For this purpose, many heathens keep a special bowl to leave offerings in the house of cakes and ale, or may leave food or drink on or near a small garden altar. Some festivals. Different heathen communities and individuals celebrate different cycles of seasonal holidays based on their cultural affiliations, local traditions, and relationships with particular gods. There is no fixed calendar of heathen festival dates. The 3 heathen festivals most commonly celebrated in the UK are Winter Nights, usually celebrated in October or November, Yule, which is a 12-day festival that begins around the time of the winter solstice, and a festival for the Anglo-Saxon goddess Eostre in the spring, otherwise Ostara. Magic and seership were practiced by some individuals within ancient heathen cultures, and this is also the case with today's heathen community. Some Northern European magical practices being revived, by heathens include the carving of runes into talismans and the chanting of charms called Galdor. Some heathens are also rediscovering Northern Europe shamanistic practices, also known as Seidh. It is spelled Seidh, but pronounced Seidh. In a ritual called ocular Seidh, a seer or seeress answers questions or gives advice to participants. Many modern heathens also practice runic divination. Although magic was part of ancient heathen culture, it did not play a part in the religious rituals of Blot and Sumbul. Therefore, it is not seen as an intrinsic part of the religion. Although all heathens share a belief in the ability of the gods to enact change in the world, they do not all believe in the ability of magicians to do so. Some ethics, beliefs, and other paths, and then that is where I will leave you guys. One of the central concepts in heathenry is word, W-Y-R-D. The force that connects everything in the universe throughout space and time. I'm sure you guys have heard that term before. Heathens believe that all of their actions can have far-reaching consequences through the web of word. They understand that who they are, where they are, and what they are doing today is dependent on actions they and others have taken in the past, and that every choice they make in the present builds upon choices they have previously made. With an understanding of word comes great responsibility. If we know that every action we take or fail to take will have implications for our own future choices and for the future choices of others, we have an ethical obligation to think carefully about the possible consequences of everything that we do. Thus, one of the principal ethics of heathenry is that you take responsibility for your own action. That is an every daily life type of thing that most adults should be doing anyway. Another heathen value is frith. It's spelled F-R-I-D-H, but is pronounced frith, F-R-I-T-H. The maintenance of peace and friendship within a social group. Obligations towards friends, kin, and community are taken seriously by heathens. Like many peoples living far apart in a harsh climate, pre-Christian heathens put great stress on hospitality, and this is still valued in modern heathens. A related concept is the giving of gifts. Through both gift giving and hospitality are bound by reciprocity, a principle that heathens consider important. I told you guys, the wine got to me a little bit. Plain speaking, honesty, and forthrightness are also important to heathens. This may be seen as part of a value system based upon personal honor, which eschews deceit and dishonesty towards members of a social group. Heathens place great value on giving their word, and any form of oath-taking is taken extremely seriously. This often means that heathens will not sign their name to something unless they can assent to it in both letter and spirit. Heathenry is focused on right living in the here and now and does not place as great an emphasis on the afterlife as do some other religions. Whereas Valhalla, otherwise known as Odin's Hall, is popularly seen as the Norse equivalent of heaven. This is a misconception. According to the mythology, as recorded in the Eddas, Valhalla is only for warriors who die in battle. Moreover, half of these battle-slain warriors go to Freya's Hall and half to Odin's Hall. Those who drown at sea go to the goddess Ran's Hall, R-A-N. People who die of natural causes go to the hall of the goddess Hel. Most of today's heathens see Hel as a neutral place where they will be reunited with their ancestors. Not H-E-L-L, like the devil's hell, H-E-L, the goddess. Sources do not enable a complete reconstruction of the pre-Christian Scandinavian and Anglo-Saxon views of the soul. One concept, however, which is still retained in folk stories is that of the fetch or The fetch was held to be a part, I'm not trying to pronounce that other word because I'm going to destroy it. The fetch was held to be a part of the person which might be contacted during life, but which would not be physically seen until just before death. The sight of one's fetch was indeed a signal of the ending of one's life. There are a few passages in the sources which are interpreted by some as indicating an ancient heathen belief in reincarnation, but they are not exactly compelling. Some modern heathens believe in the continuation of a part of a person through reincarnation, while others do not. I've noticed that while heathens don't exactly believe in reincarnation, a lot of witches and spiritualists do. I'm one who definitely believes in reincarnation. And then what I'm going to end with is heathenry is a living religion based on literary and archaeological sources for the religious practices of a particular pre-Christian culture and extended by the relationships of modern heathens with their gods. It differs from Wicca and other modern-day non-reconstructionist pagan paths in a number of ways. What happened there? Sorry, I think I just might have broke my necklace. I hope not. The primary difference is that heathens are hard polytheists. They honor a large number of individual gods and goddesses and other spiritual beings whom they see as existing independently from humans. And in common with many indigenous religions worldwide, they also honor their ancestors. Heathens differ from Wicca and many of the other modern-day non-reconstructionist pagans in many other ways. They reject the concept that all goddesses are aspects of the goddess and that all gods are aspects of her consort. They also reject the Jungian concept of gods and goddesses as archetypes in the unconscious mind. Heathen festivals do not follow the eightfold wheel of the year based on solstices and equinoxes. Their rituals do not involve casting circles or calling quarters. Magic is not an essential or central part of heathenry, and the majority of heathens do not consider themselves witches. There are no degrees of initiation within heathen religion and no high priests or high priestesses. Despite these theological differences, many heathens are involved in the wider pagan community for social and political reasons. So while there are big differences between witches, Wiccans, pagans, spiritualists, and heathens, there are some similarities, but there are also a lot of differences in heathenry and witchcraft. Whereas you have your typical coven structure in witchcraft, a lot of heathens don't have that same structure. Again, it's similar, but it's not the same. Every religion has their own way of doing things. Even some covens, let's say my coven, for example, mine and Crystal's coven. We have two high priestesses. I'm a high priestess. She is a high priestess. We have our maiden priestess. We will have two gatekeepers, one for each of our priestesses, one for myself and one for Crystal. Then we have our bard. Our bard is our person who raises the energy and keeps the energy up within our coven, within our circle. Then we have, since we are an eclectic elemental coven, we have our ladies of the elements, and we have one person for each element. And then we have our historian and scribe, which is who takes charge of our book of shadows, making sure that our everything important to the coven, our rituals and so forth, is written down into our book of shadows. While we may do it that way, there may be another American coven, witches coven, who maybe doesn't use a bard or doesn't use a historian or scribe. Each religion, each sector, I guess, of your different types of witches, your different genres, whether it be heathenry, Celtic, Norse, pagan, Wiccan, and I know I feel like an ass, but I know I'm forgetting a whole bunch of them. I just can't think of them right now. But every single one of them honors their craft differently. It'd be a little weird if it was the same, honestly. Being different in your craft is what makes your craft yours. While you do things fairly uniformly in a coven, you also, what you may start out with will actually change over time. Everything's not going to stay uniform from the start to the finish every single year. When we first started our coven, our goal is going back to the old religion. We are trying to eliminate a lot of the technology aspect that a lot of the modern day covens have incorporated into their covens, meaning we want the face-to-face real interaction and making magic together as a unit, whereas a lot of your new age covens, they like to just get together and hang out. That's not what we're about. We are about the commitment to the coven, to getting together face to face and making things happen as a unit. As you all know, while we don't discourage our coven members from continuing on with their solitary practice and their own private lives outside of the coven, we definitely encourage it. We, as a unit, the magic that we would make together as a unit will be 10 times stronger and more heard than just going on the solitary. But covens aren't for everybody, and we have learned that just since we started this. We started out with almost 20, and we are down to 9 at this point. Some people just don't have the time for the commitment to it. Others don't want. We had somebody refer to it as a cult. But she wanted to be a part of it, but we were a cult, and said that she didn't want to be a part of a cult. So that was a whole big mess. People look at it differently. A lot of, you have to find people who have the same energy you have. You can't have people who, yes, Ronnie, a cult. That is exactly the words that she used, was cult. And I think that, like, a lot of the people who originally thought that they wanted to be a part of our coven, they thought it was just going to be a bunch of girls getting together to hang out that had common interests, and we would chit chat and, maybe have some drinks together and talk about witchcraft without actually practicing, without learning, teaching, and having that coven atmosphere to things. So a lot of people just weren't about that. And it's the same thing with heathenry. While they don't carry the same values as what my coven may, a heathen group of people, otherwise known as a kindred, as I said, have different set of values than what we may have. Exactly, it's not a coven. It's a hangout, is what it is, and that's exactly what a lot of people wanted. It was a question that we had asked from the get-go, like, okay, are you guys looking for a coven type where we get together on a monthly basis, we do Sabbath rituals together, blase blase, and the amount of people who actually said that they just wanted to hang out, it was pretty astounding. So it's definitely been a learning experience, and I'll just say a learning experience from the day that we started to put all of this together. I can't say that there have been tears. I cried at the very first meeting because of an experience my best friend had with a guided meditation. But there is a lot of sweat and tears and research and organization that goes into a coven, whether it be a witch's coven, a heathen gathering, or kindred. A lot. I've noticed that with heathens keep it more, and it's suggested with a witch's coven as well, to have people that you know as part of your coven. While that's true, I actually like the fact that we have women in our coven that we didn't know outside of our group or anything. I had put an ad in one of the Northeast Ohio witches pages that I am on, asking for people who were interested in joining a coven. And like I said, we got an overwhelming response at first, until we actually got into the details of letting people know that this is what it is, and then a whole lot of people backed out. So it tells me that a lot of people don't quite understand what a coven is. They're not actual practicing spiritualists or witches. Once you actually get into the inner workings of doing stuff like this, it's the things that you see and the things that you learn about other people. It's pretty eye-opening. It's definitely made me realize more. I fall off my path sometimes, I guess you could say, because I don't practice every day. But putting together our coven has actually helped bring that back out of me and put that drive back into me to push myself to work with my personal deities on a daily basis. And even when I'm just cleaning my house or stuff like that, it's made me appreciate my craft even more, to see how many people there are out there who have a huge misconception about witchcraft and what a coven is. Whether it be, you're absolutely right, Tanessa, life definitely does get in the way sometimes, and here lately life has been kicking me in my ass. But this coven happened when it happened for Crystal and I. I wouldn't want to have this coven with anybody other than Crystal. Like, we looked it up, we did our thing, and she is yin and I am yang, and it's perfect. I've never felt more whole than I do when I am practicing with the girls. It's an amazing experience. And honestly, anybody who has a chance to form a coven, obviously, don't form a coven if you don't have the experience. There's a lot that goes into it. But if you have a chance to join a coven with like-minded people that believe in the same things that you believe in, I strongly encourage it. It's been a great experience for me, and we're only 2 months into it right now. We've still got a whole year and a day to go before we actually initiate the members of our coven. Our high priestess and maiden priestess initiation is coming up, and we are super excited about that. I may actually talk to Crystal about possibly doing a live teaching for our sisters here for Unseen on what exactly a coven is and the inner workings of a coven and stuff like that. So if you guys are going into or thinking about joining a coven, you know what you're getting yourself into, and you know what to... No, definitely not like my last coven at all. It's the same with Crystal. It's definitely not at all like the previous covens that her and I were in. And that's honestly what we wanted to get away from. We didn't want things to be the way that they were for our old covens. That was why we left the covens that we were in, it wasn't for us anymore. And we took everything that we didn't like out of those and we brought together everything that we do like and that we have in common, even our differences in the way that we do things. The yin and the yang with her and I, it makes everything flow together so well. I've never been happier with my spiritual side and my situation as far as that goes. So I definitely highly encourage, if you have the opportunity to join a coven, do some more research on what exactly it means to be in a coven, because it's not all peaches and cream and what some people make it out to be. It's definitely a lot more than that. Yeah, absolutely, Tanessa. You learn the bad, now you will make this one work. And it definitely will work. I have full faith. The girls that we have with us, myself, Crystal, and my friend Lydia, we all work really well together. So I think it's going to be an experience, and a very rewarding one at that. So anyways, enough of my rambling. That's the information I have for you guys on heathenry. There are a ton of books out there on heathenry. Druid. Why did I just lose the term I was looking for? Norse is what I was looking for. If you're more interested in learning about it, get you some books and learn some more on heathenry. There's a lot more to it that isn't exactly the easiest to put into words. I just wanted to generalize what heathenry is and give you guys a good idea of heathens and what they are described as and where it comes from. So with that being said, that's all I have for you guys. If you guys don't have any questions or anything, I'm going to hop off of here. I think I'm going to go take me a cool shower. I am dying. It is extremely hot, very muggy. It rained today in the high 80s. And while I'm not out there in Nevada or anything like that, I hate the humidity here. It's ridiculous. Gets my face all shiny and bleh, just makes me feel all bloated and gross. So, and I also recommend chocolate wine. Definitely look into some chocolate wine. It has a dark chocolate aftertaste with a hint of black cherry. It is delicious. Cheers, my loves. I hope you all have a great rest of your Sunday. And I will talk to you soon. Blessed be.